Welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast, your guide to optimizing your life one health tip at a time. This podcast is designed to entertain and inform, not to provide medical or health advice. Always consult your doctor when it comes to your personal health or before you make any changes to your diet, exercise, or lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm Coach Kyle, here with a very special guest, Andres. And Andres is, for number one, has the best mic and camera setup of any guest we've ever had. He came prepared. He's like, it's like a real studio. He informed me he was a YouTuber, so his stuff looks real good. But Andres is a registered dietitian, and it's my understanding that you help people eat and move optimally so they can feel their best and live their best. Is that an accurate read, Andres?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of what I do. I think it's goes a little bit more in depth, but yes, I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, very good. And then before we dive into like health and nutrition content, I got a few questions for you about coaching people. So like, I assume you regularly meet with people and help them shape their diet and lifestyles, right?
100%.
What are some of the things that you found that are most effective in terms of getting people to do what they should do?
For them to come up with the solution, not me as a coach. And I think the way to do that is just by asking a lot of reflective questions. I like to ask a lot of why. I like to ask a lot of how. And from a non-judgment standpoint. I just got off of a phone call with a woman who just joined our program, and she's scared that I'm going to judge her choices. And I said, I will never do that. You can eat your, she works at a gas station. And I was like, I'm not going to judge if you eat like the hot dogs from like the thing that you just told me you did. I'm just simply going to ask you, why do you think that was a choice at the time? And what do you think would have been something different? So for me, I think in coaching is empowering clients to make their own decisions because they feel empowered to be able to change from within and not because somebody told them to do so.
Man, that is so good. That's so good and so wholesome. Recently, I just went 180 to that, and I started being really aggressive with some of my clients.
How does that work?
Actually, so far, so great. We'll see how long I get with it.
It's interesting because I do believe that sometimes people need tough love. And like when you kind of like take the soft approach and for them to kind of come up with things, like some people just like to be told what to do. But then ultimately what I want is for people not to be dependent on that, because then it's just they're always expecting somebody to tell them what to do. And then again, it just lacks that empowerment piece. But I do think sometimes we need a little bit of like tighten up the knot to get people to do and, say what they say would do.
No, I like that. Yeah, the other day I was on a video call with one of my clients, and I said, "See that right there on your shoulder?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I go, "That's where your rear delt should be." There was one other person on the phone call, and he just died laughing. But
well, if that's the way you approach it, I think obviously I would want you to be my coach.
Yeah. So I do like your method though, and for the most part, that's how I operate. I try to operate from a place of understanding. I've always found though, for me personally, that like when I want to coach, right, and I'm not your average coachee, but when I want to coach, I want someone who is going to tell me what to do and going to be straightforward and hold me accountable. So how do you walk that line when you're like teaching someone and you're having them come up with a solution, but how do you walk that line of giving them something that they don't actually know they need and then holding them to that?
Yeah. I think what most people pay for coaching is just accountability. It's not information, right? Because like there's plenty of that going around, whether it's like the right or wrong information. But the point is, and I think I read a little bit of your background, the fact that you had to self-educate yourself into a lot of the things that you know now. So like what we end up doing is just simply holding people accountable. Now, accountability and the way that I try to create it for people, there's 3 levels of it, right? There is the self-accountability, which is the hardest one to do, which is you holding yourself to do the things you want to do. There's the peer accountability, which is when you surround yourself with a community of people, whether it's like your spouse or a partner or a friend or whatever is the case, that holds you to that standard. And then there's the expert accountability, which is when you have somebody that not only like has walked the path, but at the same time, most likely you're paying money to, and there's a little bit more in the line. So for me to get people to not be dependent on expert accountability is equip them with the tools so they can be self-accountable, so they can have a circle of people to help and support them. I tell people like, who are you hanging out with? And this is the part of it that they're not expect. It's like, well, you need to stop hanging out with this person because that person is not necessarily making you any better. I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with people who have spouses who are not supportive. And it's like, then you don't need to talk about this stuff with your spouse if they're not going to support you. You need to talk to this friend who is like going to the gym with you. And I think that is the way that we can elicit change, because to me, Kyle, like I care more about what happens in like 3 years down the line after I coach somebody rather than just what happens in 3 months. Because if you can't sustain the result, then what's the point of doing it in the first place? I mean, at least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and all jokes aside, the clinic we have, the longevity center, it's kind of how we operate. And I've had business people in my life be like, "It's a terrible business model. Like, why would you equip everybody with the tools they need to send them off by themselves and not need you?" And in the case of the longevity center, why would you find the root cause and solve their health issues so they don't need you anymore? And the answer is because that's the right thing to do.
That is the right thing to
And
do.
with that comes great business, like referrals and all kinds of stuff. So, treating
Because
people right.
you don't do it for the money. You don't do it
Yeah.
for like the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. Treating people right and equipping them with the tools. I love that approach.
Yeah.
So, speaking of the information that everybody is inundated with and has a bunch of, um, what's your philosophy on nutrition as a registered dietitian? Because in the health coaching biohacking space, registered dietitians often get a bad name.
Yeah, we do.
They're
We
like
sure do.
the ones going to school with outdated knowledge and things that are not necessarily what some of the more aggressive camps on vegan and carnivore side would agree with. In fact, not too long ago, I reviewed a client's food plan gotten from a registered dietitian. It was wake up and have a bowl
It
of
was a joke.
Honey Nut Cheerios. And then lunch was a turkey sandwich. And then dinner was 3 ounces of fish, rice, and dessert. I was like, okay. So arguably, there is a group of registered dietitians out there that don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're
A
just
lot of
following
them.
what they were taught in school and that was outdated information. But you seem to have a different, more modern approach. You're a big dude. You look good. You
Yeah.
look fit. So what's your thought process? What's your way of approaching it?
Yeah, I think we get a bad rep, and with all reason. And I have gone against the grain on dietetic school, like and dietetics as a professional overall. And I think even told we were talking about this coming into the podcast that I am a dietitian that goes against the grain. I don't think you probably heard of many dietitians that are about to embark on a carnivore diet, right? So that probably kind of speaks a little bit about the things that I do. I think in academia, the dietetics profession is broken. I think it is outdated, and it's up to us to be able to catch up on data, on information, to be able to just stay ahead of the curve. I think the conventional model of dietetics is, excuse the language, very shitty, and it doesn't work. And if I was doing exactly what I was doing then, when I started my profession, I don't think I would be in this podcast right now, and we're probably working at a clinic. I think it has value because I feel like the profession of dietetics within a clinical space, it's something that not many people can do. And I think I got firsthand experience when I'm working in a trauma hospital, and like, you need to understand exactly what a tube feeding or a TPN needs to be exactly to deliver specific needs and nutrients to keep somebody alive. And I was charged to do some of that stuff back then in my clinical time. But in the real world of like helping people be healthy, live better, uh, prevent disease, I think there's just a lot of people out there within my title that do not have nearly what it takes to be able to do what they're doing, and they should not be called themselves dietitians. And I'm like super relentless about this. And the same token, I am not one of those dietitians that believe that if you're not a dietitian and you don't have an RD, you shouldn't really be providing nutrition advice. I think that's also stupid. I just, as long as you do it with the right intention, and also you're doing it with the right information that is evidence-based and backed by, adequate science and research. So some of like the people that I look up to the most in terms of this space are not, they don't even have like a degree related to nutrition, but I know because of the way that they've, and you probably would be one of them, but they have educated themselves so well, and they understand how to deal and talk to people, that to me that's what matters. Can you help somebody? And what doctors usually say, first do no harm, right? It's, if you can do that, then I think our profession is irrelevant. And to be honest, and it's probably the first time I probably have said this in a podcast, but I'll be willing to kind of hang on my like my title. I still pay for the fees and the dues, and then I had to like do 80 CEUs that I usually try to cram up and all like within a week, so I can just simply pay the thing and just simply put my name or my letters after the thing. I just don't think that's irrelevant, because people don't come to me because I'm an RD, but they like the authority, which is the way I said it. I'm a registered dietitian.
Yeah, man, I like that. Way to be raw. I appreciate it. So when it comes to like the advice you give people, um, what are the broad strokes? Like, what are you looking at? How are you coaching people? And before we probably dive into that, what's your typical client? Like, who are you talking to? Is this someone who's looking to do body recomp? Is this someone who is trying to recover from cancer? Is this someone who is fighting diabetes? Like, what are you looking at? Who are you talking to?
I'm usually talking to the overworked, burnt out, 40-year-old dad or mom. Used to be just moms only, and now I'm getting a lot of dads coming to me. And say dads is because they're family people who have just, master areas of their life, but then their health just took a massive backseat. And you can look at it in their face, and it's just, you see everything, right? They're overstressed and all that, and they're just simply tired of like the overload of information or misinformation out there, and they just simply want a clear path to something that works for them and their lifestyle. That's how I help. That's who I help.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, what's your broad strokes, your philosophy to nutrition? We've got a lot of camps going on. So, if you could
Yeah.
sum it up in one or two sentences, where would you say you land in all this mess that we have?
Step one is building self-awareness. So essentially trying to shine a light of like, what is it that you're currently doing right now that we actually had to change? I feel like awareness precedes change. So whenever you know what's going on, then, I mean, how many people come to you and they're like, I eat clean, I eat all the right things. And like, well, like, do you even know what that is? Like, and it is actually something that is happening. So building self-awareness is the first tool to help people understand this, so they start to build their own aha moments, right? Like, whoa, this is something that definitely was not helping me. So building self-awareness is first.
Well, let me
The
hold on, let
second,
me pause you right there. That is massively powerful, right? Like, if you don't know what you're doing, how can you improve? Personally, my anecdote for this is if I want to lose weight, I just start tracking what I'm eating with no actual like trying to change anything. I just start tracking, and when I start tracking, I start losing weight without any conscious effort.
I always use an analogy, which is like, your bank account and your finances, right? Like, if you're not good at managing that, and you don't ever look at your bank account, how in the world you're going to be able to really track and determine whether you're on the right place to do it? And I mean, I still probably am, but one of those, right? Like in your business, like if you don't really track how things are going, like how are you going to be able to do it? So I do, in building self-awareness, I kind of goes into the second step. What gets measured gets managed. And that's another big piece that I think for me is important. And I don't really I don't get my clients to become overly obsessive over numbers and metrics and data, but I do believe I try to empower them to use that to change. And whether it's, tracking awareness of calories, of macronutrients, looking at their body composition data, their labs, and connecting that with how they feel, which is again the subjective piece of it. So that's, I don't get them to be so married into the numbers, but also the way that the numbers also make them feel. So that's why I like
Yeah,
to call it awareness instead of just thinking of calorie counting and macro counting because there's no intention behind it.
Yeah, no, I like that. Tying it into how you actually feel um, is tricky for a lot of people because they live outside their bodies or they live trapped in their heads. They don't know how they feel.
Yeah.
Time and time again, when I take someone on as a client and they start strength training for the first time and they started cleaning up their diet, it's like 3.5 weeks to the T. Like every time they text or call me and they're like, wow, I can feel this.
It's
It's
yeah,
just
it's
like
funny.
every
It's like
time.
it's about that time, right?
Yep.
It's usually within the first month that they have a shift, a change. Something happens that they start to notice like something is just, they were completely unaware of what it's like to feel good.
Very nice. So build awareness. What gets measured gets managed. And I'm assuming there's a step 3 because any good plan has 3 steps minimum.
Yeah. So, and the last part of it too is, rebuilding. Well, I like to call it kind of like rebuilding a good nutrition and lifestyle plan. And the way that I try to do this is I start with the basics. I call them the core 5, which I usually explain to clients are like the very basic things that you should always try to kind of keep. And they're stupid things. When I tell them to you, you'll be like, obviously, everybody knows that, but people are not doing them, right? So I think that's important. So these are 5 simple things. It's getting enough protein, which is prioritizing that, getting enough water, like I'm not talking about hydrogenated water or stuff, just water for God's sakes first. And then getting enough fiber to be able to support gut health and gut motility and also satiety. Getting enough food, because I think a big issue that people now have is the fact that they undereat only to binge later on. And then getting enough movement. And I'm not talking about like a super structured training program, just simply move your body, because we are a society that is like hyper sedentary, is eating way too much, and is not doing the other things that we just talked about. So it's like this is the foundation. And when people master that, and I asked them, like, I want you to master this for like the first 14 days. Like, I want you to check these boxes every day without talking numbers and stuff like that. Once we do that, then we move on to the next step. Okay, now let's aim for a specific protein target and try to make sure your calories remain around what they need to be within specific nutritional guidelines that we need to establish. And then we try to go for like a month, and then we start to kind of push in more stuff into that. So it's essentially like a brick by brick type of building in terms of what we need to do, but we need to start with the, I guess we call it lowest hanging fruits. And I think those are, when I look back in my trajectory coaching clients and I look at like the ones that have succeeded post my program and then they've kept the weight off, and asking what you do. Well, like, are you still tracking calories? Well, here and there. Well, what are you doing? Well, prioritizing protein, like the 5 things I just told you about. So I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
really the key.
One of those I want to hit on because goodness knows I've hit on the other 4 enough. Um,
Figured.
the eat enough, right? And so I get quite frequently women who come in and they have this mindset, right, that I can't eat any more calories than 1,400, 15, 16, 1,700 calories a day, whatever it might be for them, or I'm going to get fat. And calories are the devil. And there's no way I could do that. And then I proceed to take them on a reverse diet, which is a very difficult psychological journey for them.
Yeah.
But it seems to be like an epidemic we have in this country of females, particularly, being raised with this mindset that they have to eat less. When a lot of times what they need is to eat more to actually fuel their hormone production so they can feel balanced, so they can actually get good sleep, so they can actually have the energy to work out. Is this something you see in your?
All of the time. And there's 2 camps of both women and men, because believe it or not, men are just more quiet about this stuff, but some of them that are very like over obsessive about how they want their body to look, they still struggle with the same things. So, but there's 2 camps. It's like the ones that say that I cannot eat this much, yet they're unaware of the fact that they are, right? They only pay attention to what they believe is the right things that they're doing. And then the ones that are truly frightened to eat, and that if I was spending 24 hours with them, I would totally see exactly what they're saying. We start with camp number 1. which are the ones, let's just kind of focus on women for a second, which is the 43-year-old mom that is eating salads and barely anything, right? Those are her 1,400 calories, but she's forgetting about the munching and the snacking on the walnuts and the things that the leftover from the kids that happen anywhere between 7:30 and 10 o'clock, that she doesn't necessarily register that it actually amounted to 2,000 calories that she had at night. Or maybe not on a daily basis, but it could be the same woman who on Saturday night, she just had like one too many mimosas or like on brunch, right? And then she decided to like overeat, but then again, she only paid attention to what happened Monday through Thursday. So then she's like backloading a lot of her calories on the weekend only to be restrictive in this cycle that is just vicious every single time because you feel guilty, but you don't want to accept the fact that you're eating too much. That's a group of people that even if you give them 200 calories more and you consistently get them to do that, like, I feel amazing. Why am I losing weight at 1,600 calories? Yeah, well, you probably were not consuming even that much when you think about the total. So that's one group. Okay. The second group was the ones that are truly under eating. And I think for them, it's just a very broken, distorted relationship with food that started way before, we had an initial conversation, usually in their childhood. And when you ask these women, where, like, when did they start restricting themselves so much, it's rooted in some form of, my mom always was super, like, focused on thinness, or I was told that I was X this time, or I had a sister. There's something associated with it, so they developed this fear around it, because the only time that they were successful is when they cut their calories down and they looked their best, and now, like, this is equal to this, so I'm never going to be able to go above that, because the moment that they see the number go up 1 pound, it's the moment that immediately registers in their brain, like, it's game over, never going to do that again. So then they continue to restrict, and then it happens what you said: hormonal disruptions, metabolic adaptation, all this stuff. And then now that's a harder thing to fix because it takes time. And like you said, it's a cluster, talk about things that you have to do when you're actually trying to reverse somebody onto eating a lot more calories. That's what I see.
Yeah, yeah, that's very similar to my experience. On that, what are your thoughts on reverse diets?
I love
Um,
that approach, and I think it's, and the way you say I think that psychologically that's what's easier on people to do, because when you're doing a reverse diet, you're not getting them from like 1,200 calories to like 2,000 calories overnight. You're doing it, and the way I teach it to our clients is like, we're doing it at a step like manner. Like, what is 100 calories? That is like an egg. That's a banana. I mean, is that so much more food every day? No. Okay, like, so let's just maybe try to do that. And then, like, I guess, like, the ulterior motive that we do when we're reverse dieting people is like essentially getting them to kind of have those minor wins in terms of feeling like, okay, nothing bad's happening. And I'm sure you see this often. More often than not, you'll see people actually dropping weight as they're going up, and then they start to experience like, oh my god, what is like happening? It's like, in the way I explain it to them, it's like, imagine, like, have you, I always like tell people, have you ever driven like a stick shift and like in a car? It's like, well, yes, no, okay, well, if you don't know what it looks like, it's like you have to put things in gear. And for those in the camp of, you being chronically under eating, and then they start to eat more and feel better, it's like you kind of had that thing stuck in first, and you could not get that car to move any faster. So the way that we do this is like, we got to get you to fuel the engine, put more stuff in there so that you can move to second, third, and you can move with more speed. And people start to somehow, with my analogy, start to get it. And that's kind of how I get people to do that, and why I believe so much in reverse dieting.
yeah, yeah, no. The first experience I ever had with this was accidental. I had dieted down for about a year straight, right? And I was at 10.4% body fat,
Wow.
eating 1,600 calories a day, in the gym 3 hours a day. And I just was like, I'm tired. Everything hurts. Like, man. And so I just started eating more. And I just went up to 2,500 calories. Just went up to
Straight
2,500
up.
calories. And over the next 3 weeks, I lost like 10 pounds
Wow.
because the metabolism just came back. The hormone just came back. The thyroid came back. The testosterone came back. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, this blows people's minds when they come to me and they're like, hey, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, we're going to eat more. They're like, what?
Yeah, it messes up with their heads. But it's like the status quo on like the weight loss industry. It's like it's less, eat less, move more, which
Yeah.
I think it's again like such a blanket statement, and that's I think where like a lot of times it creates more problems than solutions.
Here's the tricky part, though. It works, right?
It does.
So,
It
like,
does.
you have
It's
to
just
admit,
like context dependent. It does. So like it's sort of like the premise, right? It's like yeah, you got to move your body more. You do need to eat less, but then you got to eat less of the wrong things and more of the right ones. And I think that's why again why I feel like it's nuance and like or I guess like when it's being told when it's being told to people as a blanket statement and just like yeah figure it out without a lot of context. But yeah, I think that's the
it
way
also matters genetically and who you are and how you're set up as well. Because I had someone who has been dieting down for about a year. She's not coaching with me. She just called me for some advice. She's very, very low calorie. I think sub 1,000. And Doc pulled some lab work on her, and everything's like perfect, like optimized. Almost everything's dialed in. And so sometimes it does work for people, and it works well.
yeah.
There were no like massive warning signs or anything. But I think for the majority of people, the getting the metabolic rate up, fixing the hormones, getting the energy, getting the muscle up is a huge path to success.
Muscle, man. Like I think if you were to ask me one thing that I feel like is the key to longevity is protecting muscle at all costs. Because it's such a precious tissue that drives metabolism up. It's so many things that are associated with it. And I mean, there's a lot of research to show it now, but men that are 70 who have higher muscle mass and things like that, it's like they tend to live longer. So yeah, you said it and I'm like yeah, that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy. I mean, it's protein, it's strength training, and it's anabolic steroids, right?
Yeah, inject them all, and that's a solution. That's like the surprise piece of
Gotta
it.
keep you on your toes. So you were mentioning carnivore, right? You're
Yeah,
like gonna go carnivore,
yeah,
and
about to do it
so
soon.
I have talked about this multiple times on our podcast. I am not a huge fan of carnivore in any way, shape, or form,
Me
and you
either.
probably aren't yourself. Yeah. However, there are a few key times when it actually is amazing for people. And so, in my opinion, it is a very strong option when we are having autoimmune reactions to every food, because usually we can quiet the inflammation in the body, we can reset the system, and then slowly introduce things back. That seems to be the use case of carnivore, in my opinion.
Yep.
So, why are you doing this?
So you said some important key points. I'm doing this mostly because I got a comment on the whole thing started because I got a comment on a YouTube video I did on carnivore diets and kind of talking about the research and this stuff. And somebody said, "Well, like you talk all big and stuff, but have you ever done it?" And I was like, "I'll take your challenge. I'll do it." So, but then my hypothesis and my premise to your point about like dealing with a lot of insensitivities and stuff like that with food that potentially may cause a lot of autoimmune reactions is the fact that we got to understand where people are starting with when they go from whatever diet they had, and you said it, sad diets, right? Like the standard American diet, switching over to a like carnivore diet, like you're removing so much stuff that are the benefits related to the fact that you cut that out, or there's something inherently beneficial from just simply eating meat and putting yourself in a state of ketosis, which is really what that is, right? Is there something like that? So the best way to could have put that to test is like, well, I'm going to develop a protocol scientifically back, meaning like I'm testing a bunch of stuff to determine whether if I go whole foods, whole 30 style, so essentially cutting gluten, I have cut out gluten, dairy, most grains, sugar, and the only thing I've eaten is like fruits, vegetables, lean meats, and healthy fats. Like that's literally all I've included for 30 days. Are the benefits of carnivore a result of something inherently related to that, or the fact that you cut a bunch of stuff out? So that's why I'm doing this. This is why I wanted to go and kind of experience the differences. And perhaps I'm not a person who has an autoimmune condition. So maybe it's not applicable to me. In fact, my lab work doesn't necessarily reflect that. I literally just met with my doctor just to go over results. And you see the lab work, and it wasn't really anything like crazy different in terms of changes from day 1 to day 30 on whole foods. I'm curious on what's going to happen when I do the other one, but this may be applicable to somebody who, let's say, for example, have an autoimmune condition and then they struggle, but then they don't have the best diet, right? Okay, like, do you have to go as aggressive first? Maybe they need that, and cool, sure. But maybe they just simply want to do things a little bit more sustainably, because to be honest, I'm not looking forward to doing that, man. Like, not one. I just put together a daily meal plan of what that's gonna look like, and it's so freaking sad, pun intended. Seriously, like, wow, this is gonna have to be eating this for 30 days, and then versus my Whole Foods part of it, which I encourage me to cook more stuff and be creative, and like I ate things I have not eaten in so long, and it made me feel really good. So that's the jits of how and why I'm doing all this.
So are you going nose to tail? You doing the whole thing? Are you really committing?
Yeah, I'm working with a company called Force of Nature. They're gonna they were happy enough to send me this stuff in exchange for just me talking about it. But like they're sending me like things like liver, and like, now I'm not gonna be eating bull testicles. Like, I'm not gonna go Liver King route, and I'm not doing things raw. I just want to, like, it's gonna be a version of that, but it's not gonna be like the aggressive, crazy carnivore. Like, I'm like,
Yeah, like a normal
diehard.
human carnivore diet.
Yeah, normal human carnivore. Yeah,
Yeah,
not like religious carnivore like a lot of people out there.
that's cool, man. I'd love to do a touch in after and see how it goes for you.
Yeah, that's I'm gonna do a round of a bunch of the podcasts that I've been on talking about this, and like I want to know what happens. Yeah, so I'm interested because I did everything. I did a DEXA scan. Like, I'm doing like performance testing, which again, 30 days. I don't think it's enough for like meaningful changes, but I think it's still like enough data to be able. Because like that's the thing. I did a video on this and like what I'm doing, and the very same people that criticize me because I haven't done it, that's not long enough. I was like, dude, like you want to do it and see, like, try to
Yeah.
put together this extensive experiment to be able to make this happen, let alone the cost of like doing blood tests and stuff. Be my guest.
I mean, I get it because I tend to agree, right? You're not doing it long enough, but I would say you're not doing it long enough for the carnivore side of it.
Yeah,
So a lot of
I
people feel
agree.
good on a month of carnivore. When you get past 3, when you get into 4 and 5, that's when it's just
Everything, and I don't really want to. I'm not looking forward to experience that. So
yeah.
and my prediction is that I know I'm gonna feel better because I have done a ketogenic diet like long term before, so I know what ketosis feels like, which is really what kind of drives a lot of those different things and the removal of so many different things. I'm just really wanting to know if, like, if I went, like, because I really feel like $1,000,000 right now after I cut out a bunch of that stuff. Like, I feel different, lost weight, like, unintendedly. So, like, am I going to, like, is the differences in the way I'm going to feel comparatively, like, major compared to the way that I have been feeling right now? So that's the
No,
goal.
love that. Love that, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you if they want to update on the carnivore journey or see
Two
your
simple
stuff?
places. Yeah, two simple places. Come to my Instagram so you can see what I'm doing daily. So I post like daily stories and stuff on it at Andres Ayesta. And if you just want to see like the longer, more form of the stuff, I have a YouTube channel, same name, Andres Ayesta, and you can check out some of my longer stuff where I kind of do deep downs on like everything that I'm experiencing and all the stuff that we just talked about today and the way that I kind of practice and coach clients as well. Those are the two places.
Right on. Well, thank you, Andres, for being on the Peak Performance Podcast. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Peak Performance Podcast, your #1 resource for today's top health hacks and facts. You can follow us on Instagram at the Peak Performance Pod or on X at PerformPod. You can also check out our website and weekly blogs at peakperformancepodcast.online. Again, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. We put out a new podcast every Thursday. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider. Carefully read all labels and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the product. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or should you have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Coach Kyle, Dr. K, and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein.